Hi. Hi, it's been a while since I recorded anything. It's been like, I don't know, since March, honestly. So, hi. I guess that's all I can really say. If you don't know me, my name is Michaela. I am a PhD student at the University of Tübingen, but as you can probably tell by my accent, not from Germany. I am from New Zealand and I moved here with my husband in December 2021 to do my PhD. I study medieval history and I kind of, through this YouTube channel, take you through my life and what it's like living here in Germany, the things that are difficult and the things that we're really enjoying, and the PhD process and our travels and everything. But this year I kind of took a bit of a break, if I'm honest. I recorded a lot last year and in the previous years as well, but I feel like last year I really got into a pretty decent routine, I would say, and I was filming a lot and editing a lot, but at the same time I was writing a book. So I got pretty burnt out last year. I'll talk about the book in a second, but I got pretty burnt out last year. And after going through Vlogmas in December, which I thoroughly enjoyed, I got to the beginning of this year and I just could not think of anything worse than trying to do something outside of work. And it wasn't just YouTube, it was everything. Like, I pretty much cut down on absolutely everything. And all I could really think about was work and reading books. So I've read a lot of books this year, mostly through audiobook format. I also got really sick in February, March-ish time. I got pretty sick, so I also read a lot of books during that time and didn't get much work done. And it's kind of taken me a bit of time to finally get back into the groove of things, of having a life outside of work. And I feel like coming back on YouTube was tragically one of the last steps in that. Like, I feel like I've only just now gotten into a good routine of going to the gym, and part of that, it was actually finding a new gym because I just was not gelling at my previous gym, and it was, I don't know, it was fine and there was a lot of really nice people there, but it wasn't the style of gym that I normally gel with. And I tried to make it work because of the people and because that's where Luke trains, but it just wasn't working. And so a new gym opened up that is approximately the same price because all the other gyms in Tübingen were much more expensive. So this one was a similar price to what I was paying at my old gym, but it was also so much quieter and there's a lot more machines, and that's what I normally do. I'm not such a big free weights person. I like kind of just doing my thing, and yeah, there's a lot more of this at that gym. Plus it's a lot quieter and it's a lot cooler, which is really nice because Germany is still, at least where we are, southern Germany, I should clarify, is still really not in the bandwagon for air conditioning. And so even though this gym doesn't have air conditioning, it has industrial fans, which my last gym did not have, and so I just never went in summer. So that's been really nice. So I've kind of got into a really good routine with the gym now. And then also with work, like, I am working a lot at the moment. I'm putting in over 40 hours a week, but I'm making sure that my time is concentrated. And so I might work really long days, but as soon as I'm done for the day, I'm done. And I'm really enjoying refinding that balance because that's something that I really appreciated when I was working. Do you call it in industry when it's not academia? Like, I mean, I was just working in administration, but it was in an industry that I was working. And so I really, really appreciated that work was work and work didn't come home. And I think with academia, that's something that's really, really hard to do. And so I've started to find my groove with that again, where when I'm at work, I'm working, it's really concentrated. I'm trying not to move between tasks too much and kind of do a little bit of academia stuff and then do a little bit of something else and then do a bit of academia and then do something else, because it's just, I was finding that the days were dragging out too much, and then I ended up working what felt like working the whole day and then just trying to go straight to bed and struggling to fall asleep. So that's been a really big change in kind of redefining what my work day looks like. And it is a little bit longer because it has to be at the moment. I'm working 8-ish plus hours a day. And that's fine. I'm really actually enjoying it. I'm really enjoying what I'm doing with my PhD, and I'm thinking that I'm trying to put in as much work as I can now so that the last 6 months of my PhD are not panic-filled and stress-filled and a lot going on there. And so, yeah, I'm kind of trying to do the work now so that when I hand in, it just feels like a hand in. Like, obviously I can't predict what it's going to look like, but I do remember with my master's feeling quite on top of things, and then I left all of the formatting to the last week and my computer died, so I suddenly had to change Mac, iOS formatting because I had a MacBook, the MacBook died, switched to Windows, and then had to reformat everything, and then leaving the footnotes to the last minute meant that I had to go through and format all of the footnotes, and I literally spent the whole night, the night beforehand, awake working through stuff and trying to fix it all, which is not the goal. I do not enjoy doing that, and I've kind of made a timeline for the PhD so that it's from now until May next year. I pretty much want to be writing everything so that by May I have a draft. I have like the PhD so that it's all there, it's all written, introduction, conclusion, everything. And so from May until October, which is when I'm planning on submitting, it's just editing, and it's not like trying to come up with things from scratch, but more clarifying things and adding in extra literature that I maybe missed on the first round of things. And so it's quite a lot. It's quite a lot to keep up with, but theoretically, if I can be done with the writing, or like the big segments of writing from May, by May, I guess, then from May to October, I can do the small things like the footnotes and the formatting and figuring out the structure of the PhD, because I'm actually thinking that some of my topics might actually move around because of what I've ended up writing about. Like this segment from this chapter and this segment from this chapter actually work really well together, so that maybe that will become its own chapter. I'm not entirely sure, but I want to be able to have the time to do that rather than trying to rush it in like the last couple of weeks. So that's been really nice, having a plan. But on the flip side of that is realizing that I am going to be done in like a year and a half, which is strange because I do recognize that in especially UK and New Zealand, you only get 3 years to do the PhD. And so people would be done by the point that I'm currently at. I'm aiming for 4.5 years. That's roughly what my scholarship will lead me to. And plus, I don't want to continue unfunded because then I have to have money from elsewhere. But also, I'm kind of excited to get into the postdoc phase. I'm excited to maybe expand this topic into something else, switch into a different topic, and kind of start in the next phase of the career. Obviously, I'm really loving the security of being a PhD student, but I'm also really excited to move past being on a student wage for one thing, but also just, I don't know, being a PhD student. I'm really excited to propose my own topic and become an independent researcher and apply for different universities, try out different cities. I don't know, it's all that stuff that I've been putting off thinking about for the last little while because I haven't needed to. I've had this like, I'm doing a PhD bubble, but the bubble is going to pop very soon and I'm going to need to start thinking about other things. And so pretty much next year I have to start applying for things, whether it's a book contract because I have to do it by publication here in Germany, and I want to have a book contract secured before I submit, so that when I'm submitting scholarship applications or grant applications or job applications for a postdoc, I can go saying, look, I've got this publication coming out soon. I also need to start thinking about articles and stuff, because at this point, whatever I can come out of my PhD with publications wise is theoretically going to make my CV that much stronger, because there are so many people trying to get jobs in history at the moment that whatever you can do to kind of put yourself just that little bit higher up the ladder is helpful. And so like I've got 2 publications coming out this year, which is super exciting. One of them is a book review and one of them is a chapter in a book that I contributed. Super exciting. It's my first publication in medieval history, so like feels very real. And then theoretically, a conference that I have helped organize, which is happening next week, we are planning on proposing to the participants that we do it as a special edition journal, which would mean an article, which is kind of just that little bit stronger, I guess you could say, than a book chapter. But at the same time, I've been on the organizing committee for it, so it would be me as one of the journal editors of the special edition, or the edition editors, you could say, which is quite exciting. And then I also have been planning a conference for next year at my university, which is wild. So basically next week is the IMC leads, which I actually videoed a tiny bit of last year, and then it just got busy and overwhelming and I didn't continue. But every year in July is one of the biggest conferences for medievalists that's held in Leeds, and I've planned one of the days of this. Obviously there's lots of concurrent sessions, but specifically for my field of medieval studies, there's a lot of people who kind of just slot into different sessions here and there. And so as a Merovingianist, you go to the session just to hear the one person speaking, and then you go to this session to hear the one person speaking. And so a colleague of mine and I decided to plan a full day and propose it to the conference and be like, hey, we really want to do a full day of Merovingian studies. And they accepted it, which is very exciting. So we've got 12 people, and it's that which we'll hopefully put into a special edition. But on top of that, I have proposed to my supervisor a conference to be held in Tübingen at my university, specifically on the broader idea of my thesis, which is narratology and temporality, and kind of how people use narratology or use narrative techniques to explore their ideas on time. And this is not just something that happens in my period of Merovingian studies or Lombard history, but across the Middle Ages, and it's something that I find so fascinating. And so when I was in the States not too long ago, I was talking to a professor about the possibility of this, and he proposed doing it together because we've spoken a lot together at a lot of previous conferences, and our topics always cross over really nicely, which is amazing. And so he is super keen, and we are gonna, theoretically, we're gonna talk about it next week at the conference, plan this conference here in Tübingen, which is more like a workshop, I guess you could say, and we'll bring together theoretically around 7 people who focus in this area of narratology and temporality, and bring them all together to do a full day workshop. And then hopefully that will turn into a special edition as well. So that way I'll have another article, but then I'll also be the like editor or like organizer of that special edition, which is also very cool. So on the CV, I'll theoretically have 2 journal articles, the book review, the chapter contribution, the fact that I planned a conference here in Tübingen, and all of that is just, I don't know, it's all very, very exciting. And I feel like everything is kind of coming to a head, and I've been working really, really hard to make sure that all of this happens so that when I come out of the PhD, I've got like a huge CV, so hopefully somebody will hire me. This will be very, very exciting. And then to add on top of that is a publication that has happened not in medieval history. So last year, if you were along for the ride, I was writing a book, and I had 8 months to write the book. This is for a project that I was employed on in New Zealand, and I started working there during COVID when I was living in New Zealand. And then when I got the offer to come do the PhD overseas in Germany, they offered to take me part-time online, which was really lovely. They did not have to do that, but I really, really appreciate it, because it's meant that I've had a stable part-time job while I've been here, but at the same time it's a job in history, which is amazing. And so it's just having that extra, I don't know, extra thing to put on my CV that's relevant to the field. Granted, it was modern medical history and not medieval history, but I helped with grant applications. I wrote a bunch of blog posts and biographies on the women that we were researching. I conducted oral histories, I did archival research, like everything to do with that job was very, very helpful in teaching me certain skills that I needed. And then we got the grant to do the book, and that is just like the culmination of everything that I did on that project. I'm so thankful that the contract to do the book came when it did. It did mean that I had to kind of not pause the PhD, because I continued to work on it throughout, and I did talk about this in the videos last year, but I was working insane hours, like 60-hour weeks, I want to say, in order to write the book in the short time span that we had of just 8 months, whilst also keeping on top of my PhD and writing chapters still and doing conference presentations in order to show that I'm still engaged in the PhD and I'm not taking a break. So we had 8 months to write the book, and as the primary historian on the project, I was able to hire somebody else to help me. They were also a historian, and then everyone else on the team were medical doctors. Kind of all brought our expertise together, and I proposed the structure of the book to the publishers, and they were really happy with it. And so we had 8 months to write the book, and then from August until the end of the year we had editing and going through, working with a copy editor, going and working with a historian who was kind of fact-checking everything and suggesting articles, or seeing if there was something that we said that wasn't technically true, or if we'd misinterpreted information. That was really helpful. And then basically from the end of the year we haven't been able to touch the book. It's been obviously finding photographs, which is what my colleague did, and just finalizing layout and doing the appendix and all that kind of stuff that we didn't really have to do. It was quite nice. So this whole year I haven't really had to touch the book. And then we launched it on the 1st of June. And so we flew back to New Zealand. I didn't film anything, but we went back to New Zealand to launch my book. And this is it. It's crazy to see it here in physical format. This is my book. This is what I poured my heart into for 8 months. And it might not seem like a lot of time, especially for a non-fiction book, but we were drawing from research that started in 2016 at the beginning of the project, and kind of turning that oral history biographies into book format. And for me, it was really, really important that we place these women in context. I should probably say, so it's about the first women to train as doctors in New Zealand at New Zealand's first medical school. Our first graduate was 1896, and we went through to 1967 because in 1968 the Auckland Medical School opened, and there was a unwritten rule that only 10% of women could be the intake of each year, and so there was a very low number of women that were actually studying during this period. And when the Auckland Medical School opened, that completely changed, and so we restricted it to that period. And each chapter kind of goes through the decades of what was happening in New Zealand at the time, what was happening in the world at the time, that was affecting not only these women's ability to study, but also the women's ability to have a career afterwards, or if they were expected to leave when they got married or had children, or anything that was happening at the time contextually. We wanted to put into each chapter to show what these women were experiencing, and not just their personal experience, but how their personal experience was shaped by, and a lot of the time defined by, what was happening while they were growing up and everything. And so I feel like I put my heart and soul into this book, and it was really nice to have it come out. The one frustrating thing, because I'm not going to say that it was all peaches and cream and everything was great, because it was quite a difficult process, was recognition. And I am going to talk about this. I feel like I've gone back and forth quite a lot on whether to talk about this or not, whether to reach out to the publisher or not. But since it is a book about women's history and recognizing, or placing the spotlight on women who've historically been ignored and written out of the historical record, it kind of feels a little bit contradictory what happened to me during the process. As you'll notice, my boss's name is first, and the reason for that is because the publishers told us that they don't believe in the hierarchy of first author and second author. I'm not sure if you're familiar with academic publishing, but generally the person who has contributed the most to that piece of writing, whether it's a book, whether it's an article, especially in science, it's a little bit less so in books for history, but definitely in articles for history, I should say the humanities, articles for humanities. The person who's contributed the most to that specific body of work has their name first, and then subsequent authors come after that, and then normally the project head or the lead investigator will go at the end, because they're the oversight for the whole project, but that specific body of work is written by the person who receives first author. And that's kind of how you show credit with academic publishing, and how you can put it on your CV and everything and show like, this is my body of work. Yes, I was supported by this group of people, especially when you have specialists who really know the work, or you've got professors who are really, really well known in the field who have assisted and informed you. But the person who's actually done the writing should get the credit for it. And so I asked about it. The first 2 drafts of the book, actually, my name was not on at all. And that was really kind of weird, considering that the publisher was dealing directly with me. I was writing the book, and yes, my boss was answering questions, but since I was the one writing the actual manuscript, of course I had help from other people as well, but I was the primary person. Like, I think I wrote about 80% of this book of my own words, and the publisher was asking me questions about certain things, and so I assumed that they knew that I was the one writing it, since I was the go-between. And the first 2 drafts of the book, my name was not on it at all, which is a little bit rough. And so I really pushed for it, and eventually it got put on the front cover, and it was second. And I was kind of surprised about this because of everything I know about academic publishing, everything I've spoken to. I've got a couple of friends who are working in publishing. A lot of my colleagues here obviously are postdocs, professors, and so I asked them about it. And I went back to the publishers and I asked about first authorship, and they said that they're not a press that follows first authorship. They do things by alphabetical order, which I have heard about before. It's not as common as the first author, second author hierarchy, if you want to call it that, but it is a thing that is done to kind of show these are the collaborators of the project. And I think it was especially important to my boss because it is her project, and she founded the Early Medical Women of New Zealand project, which I totally understand, but it was kind of hard feeling like, yes, the project is one thing, but this book is kind of my thing. And I've written this book. I paused my PhD for 8 months to do this book, and arguably it would not have been possible without me. And so, especially because it's like, it's my structure, I kind of decided what went into each chapter. I edited the sections that my colleagues wrote. It kind of has my fingerprints across the whole thing, and especially the voice of the book. Granted, it's a my public history voice, and not my like academic voice, but it's my voice that it's written in. And like my colleague who assisted me, we worked on his sections so that it would flow into my sections rather than being like a very stark contrast. And the sections that I was really passionate about, like the refugees and the women in research, those big sections were all like written in my tone. And so yes, it is a book that is a culmination of a project, but it really felt like my book, if I'm allowed to say that. And so it was really hard hearing from the publishers, no, we don't believe in first authorship. You guys are both authors of the book, and therefore, because my boss's name is alphabetically before mine, she'll get like the first place. Not that it means first place, but the first one that you read. At the time, I was like, okay, I fully understand your reasoning for it. I was still a bit uncomfortable about it, but like, what can you do? I now realize there was a lot of options that I had, but at the time, like, this is my first big publication. I didn't really know what to do. And theoretically, it should have been fine. I think when I look at a book, I don't just look at the names on the book. I always turn to the About the Author section to see like who's done what. And you can see here that my boss is a doctor and I'm a historian, and so you can kind of infer that I'm the one who's like heavily influenced this book because it is a historical book, and that's why I was employed on the project. The problem is that it seems like the majority of New Zealand media did not get that memo. So I was not invited to the majority of the interviews that were held regarding the book launch, and I was not invited to submit anything for any of the newspapers. I was invited to one radio interview, and then I asked to be put on a second radio interview because of everything that was going on. Basically, the first day that we launched the book was at the University of Otago's medical school's 150th anniversary, and that's why we had such a tight deadline, is because we were trying to publish the book by that point. And we were offered to give the big lecture which opens up the conference. It was an hour long, and they knew that both my boss and myself were talking, and the professor of history comes up and talks to us and says, "Hey, it's really lovely to meet you, it's great to have you here." And then he walks up to the front and he says, "Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming. I want to introduce you to our speaker tonight," and says my boss's name, and then just walks off. And I was like, hello, I'm also speaking tonight, I'm also an author of the book. Like, you literally just met me and then you just didn't introduce me, which I was a little bit shell-shocked at the time, and thankfully my boss introduced me when she went up and welcomed everyone, and that was really kind. But then I, like I said, was not invited to other radio interviews, or my boss went on national television, and when they spoke to her about national television, it said up on the screen author, singular, and then my boss's name, and then they were speaking to her entirely as if she'd written this book alone, and that was really rough. I was really upset, because I genuinely, this book could have come out without me. I 100% will acknowledge that, but it could not have come out without me in the time period that we were given. If I had have restricted my hours to what I was contracted to, because I worked a heck of a lot of overtime, this would not have been done in time, because nobody else put in the hours that I did, and I'm the primary historian on the project, and so that's like, that was my role, and I totally get that, and I was willing to sacrifice that because of the outcome. And it was really rough that in the majority of the advertisements for the book, I was not named as an author, and that it was all about my boss, which I get because it's her project, but we technically weren't launching the project, we were launching the book and linking it to the project. And so it kind of felt, like they weren't giving me the credit I deserve. And I don't know, I guess I just wanted to talk about my experience, because like, I'm trying to remind myself that it is a very valid experience, and it's really sucky, and this happens to a lot of women in academia, and it just feels like something could have been done better. I don't know who could have done better, whether it was the publishers, whether it was the advertising team, whether it was the way that the media outlets were contacted and expressly told there are 2 authors of the book. Ironically, the interview that I asked to be put on and invited to ended up being, in my opinion, one of the better interviews, purely because we actually got a chance to talk about the content of the book and like the historical side of it, and not just, I don't know, I understand that a lot of the other interviews were really short, because I mean, when you're on national television, it's only 5 minutes or whatever. And that interview, we had a much longer segment so we could actually talk about it. But it felt like I was being written out of this entire thing, when I was the one that had written the book about women who've been written out of history. And so that was really hard, and I think it's taught me a lot about publishing. It's taught me a lot about how sometimes you just need to be a bit more cutthroat, and I have grown up in an environment where you're thankful for what you're given and you don't make a scene. That's very like New Zealand culture, is you don't push too hard, and there's a really big issue with tall poppy syndrome, and so nobody ever really wants to stand out. And I think having gone through this and having experienced being pushed out of arguably what I should have been instrumental in because of my role in this, it's taught me a lot. And I'm thankful that this is a job that I was employed on and not my own actual like PhD or the thing that I'm trying to pursue a career in, because this can just be a story that hopefully other people can learn from. And I don't know, hopefully other people can learn from and not go through the same thing, because they will have the courage to stand up for themselves. I did not. I was really shocked at the time, and I didn't really expect it, so I didn't know what to do about it. And so I've learned what not to do for next time, because I do have to publish my PhD, and yeah, I'm hoping that that process will be a little bit smoother, because it is literally my PhD, and it will be turned into a monograph by myself and not my supervisors or anything. And so while I will definitely be thanking them in the acknowledgements, their names don't go on that kind of monograph. So I know what to do next time, but it was just really rough, and I felt like I wanted to talk about it because it was a really big part of the book publishing process, and I didn't want to ignore it because it's dampened the whole thing. Like, this could have been a really, really exciting big first step for a historian like myself who's very young and is hoping to head into a career in academia, and that should have been something that was celebrated and not something that ended up with such a, I don't know, I really didn't appreciate the way that I was treated, and I wish that I had been able to stand up for myself a bit more. Anyway, that is now done, and that has gone on my bookshelf, and I can happily talk about it, and I can put it on my CV, and I'm very thankful for the experience. But now, pretty much from now until October, I just get to think about my PhD, which I'm really excited about. I'm really excited to be back in Germany and to be in our apartment, even though it is ridiculously hot at the moment because we're going through a heat wave. And if you've heard me complain about summer, you know that I do not like summer. I'm a winter person through and through, and I'm really, really struggling at the moment with the heat. But I'm also excited with the new routine that I found for myself. I'm really excited to be going to the gym, to be doing this academic thing of going to conferences and planning things and publishing things, and it feels like I'm no longer in the student phase, even though of course I'm still a PhD student. I feel like I'm no longer in the student phase where I'm just kind of learning and reading and trying to write essays or chapters, but I'm in the heading towards a career phase where I'm publishing things and organizing things and kind of stepping into that next phase of the career, which feels so exciting. So yeah, I just wanted to update you all on where I'm at, say that I'm coming back, and I'm actually coming back this time. I'm determined to make this a regular thing and kind of, yeah, show you my life again and show you what it's like being a PhD student and the issues of publishing that a PhD student faces because they're lower on the hierarchy. And yeah, I don't know. It's been an interesting learning curve, but I'm really excited for this next step, and I'm excited to talk to you guys again, and I'm excited to show you my life and record things, and yeah. So thank you for listening to this grand old ramble. I have been thinking that maybe I'll turn these long form videos into some sort of podcast, because they are really just long rambles, and I ramble a lot, and I thought maybe that'd be fun to turn it into like a chatty video that is a video but is also audio format only somewhere. But I don't know, it's just thoughts that I've been having. But I hope that you're doing well. I hope that you are staying safe this summer and you're not overheating like we are here in Germany, where it's like between 30 and 35 degrees each day. And I hope that you are enjoying yourself and that you've got some exciting plans this year that you're looking forward to. And yeah, thank you for watching. I hope that you've enjoyed this. Thank you for sticking around this long. And I will see you with another video very soon. Bye.